What if the life you worked so hard to build is the very thing quietly draining you? From the outside, everything looks right. The career is stable. The future feels secure. People see progress. Brendon Burchard reached a point like this in his life. He wasn't failing. He wasn't lost. He was doing well. Yet inside, something felt empty. Life felt safe, but it didn't feel alive. This is the part of Brendon's story most people don't talk about. Before the books, before the stages, before the millions he inspired, he lived a life that made sense on paper, but felt hollow in his heart. There was no visible crisis, no dramatic breakdown, just a quiet feeling that something was missing. And that quiet feeling was dangerous, because comfort can silence the questions that matter most. Comfort doesn't warn you. It slowly convinces you to settle. It tells you not to risk what you have for what you truly want. Brendon began to realize that stability without meaning creates a deeper kind of pain, a pain that doesn't shout, but slowly erodes purpose. This realization forced him to confront a truth many people avoid for a lifetime. In this video, you'll learn what Brendon discovered during that phase of his life. You'll see why success alone doesn't create fulfillment, why playing it safe can quietly limit your potential, and how one honest moment of awareness became the turning point that changed everything. You'll also learn the habits of greatness that helped him move from comfort to purpose. If you've ever felt busy but unfulfilled, productive but disconnected, this story will speak directly to you. Stay with this video until the end, because the lesson isn't just about Brendon Burchard, it's about recognizing the moment when comfort becomes a cage and knowing what to do next. Welcome to Habits of Greatness, the channel where we explore the mindset, discipline, and daily habits behind extraordinary lives. If you're ready to grow with intention and build a life that truly matters, subscribe now and join us on this journey. Before we talk about the success, the books, or the stages, we have to talk about the fear that came much earlier, the fear that didn't look dramatic from the outside, the fear that stayed quiet. Brendon Burchard didn't fear failure the way most people think. He feared something deeper. He feared staying the same. This fear didn't show up as panic. It showed up as routine. Waking up, doing what was expected, and repeating the cycle. Days felt productive, but years felt identical. Nothing was falling apart, yet nothing felt like it was truly beginning either. That realization unsettled him more than any obvious setback ever could. Most people believe failure is the biggest threat. Brendon learned that regret is far heavier. Failure hurts in the moment. Regret follows you silently for years. It shows up late at night when everything is quiet and honest. It asks one simple question. What if you had tried? He noticed this fear wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It waited patiently. Every time he chose comfort over challenge, it grew stronger. Every time he postponed a dream for someday, it tightened its grip. The scary part was how reasonable it all sounded. Wait until you're more prepared. Wait until the timing is right. Wait until you feel confident. Waiting felt responsible. But deep down, it felt like hiding. Brendon began to understand that staying the same requires effort too. It takes energy to ignore your potential. It takes discipline to silence curiosity. It takes strength to convince yourself that this is enough, even when you know it isn't. The fear wasn't about losing what he had. It was about never discovering who he could become. There was a moment when he realized that time was moving forward, whether he changed or not. Years would pass, no matter what choices he made. The real question was simple, but uncomfortable. Would he grow with time, or would time pass without him growing at all? That question lingered. It followed him into ordinary moments. While driving, while working, while sitting in silence. It wasn't dramatic, but it was persistent. It reminded him that potential unused doesn't disappear. It turns into quiet dissatisfaction, into resentment, into the feeling that life is happening somewhere else. He started to see this fear in others too, people around him who were capable, intelligent, and hardworking, yet emotionally stuck. Not because they lacked opportunity, but because they avoided discomfort. They weren't afraid of failing publicly. They were afraid of questioning their own limits privately. Brendon realized that Living small doesn't feel painful at first. It feels safe, predictable, manageable, but over time that safety becomes heavy. It turns into the weight of knowing you chose familiarity over growth. That weight is what people carry for decades without knowing why they feel restless. The fear of regret sharpened when he imagined himself years into the future, looking back at this moment. He didn't want to explain to himself why he never tried, why he never committed fully, why he let fear dress itself up as logic. That future conversation frightened him more than any risk in the present. This wasn't about chasing success or recognition. It was about honesty, about facing the uncomfortable truth that playing small is still a choice that feels invisible while you're making it, but obvious once time has passed. Brendon didn't suddenly become fearless. He became aware. He saw that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision not to let fear decide the direction of your life. And once that awareness arrived, staying the same no longer felt safe. It felt costly. Stability is sold to us as the ultimate goal. From a young age, Brendon Burchard learned the same message most people do. Find something safe. Hold on to it. Don't rock the boat. The promise is simple. If you stay secure long enough, happiness will eventually arrive. But what no one tells you is that stability can quietly become a trap. It protects your routine, but not your spirit. It guards comfort, but not meaning. Brendon noticed how often people confuse safety with fulfillment. A steady path feels responsible, predictable outcomes feel mature. Society praises those who avoid risk and labels them successful. But beneath that praise, many people feel emotionally flat. They're not unhappy enough to leave, yet not fulfilled enough to feel alive. Stability keeps life from falling apart, but it doesn't guarantee that life is moving forward. This belief trains people to protect what they have, even when what they have no longer fits who they are becoming. Brendon saw how easy it was to build an identity around being sensible instead of being intentional. You learn to manage life instead of design it. You focus on avoiding loss instead of creating meaning. Over time, this mindset keeps people emotionally stuck, repeating patterns that feel safe but empty. Then everything changed in a single moment. Brendon's life-altering accident wasn't planned, and it wasn't gentle. One moment he was moving forward like any other day. The next, he was fighting to survive. In that instant, the illusion of control disappeared. All the things that once felt urgent suddenly became irrelevant. Status didn't matter. Plans didn't matter. Appearances didn't matter. Only one question remained. Would he live? Recovery forced stillness. Stillness forced reflection. Pain stripped away distractions that had kept deeper questions buried. When life slows you down without permission, clarity has space to enter. Brendon wasn't punished by the accident. He was awakened by it. Pain didn't arrive to ruin his life. It arrived to reveal it. Lying there, he saw how fragile certainty really was. The future he assumed would always be there suddenly felt borrowed. Stability no longer felt comforting. It felt temporary. And that realization changed how he looked at everything. If life could shift this fast, then waiting for the right time no longer made sense. Pain became a teacher. It showed him what mattered when everything else fell away. It exposed how often he had been reacting to expectations instead of living by intention. The accident didn't give him answers. It gave him honesty, and honesty demanded a response. During recovery, one question surfaced again and again. It wasn't complex. It wasn't dramatic, but it was impossible to ignore. Am I living intentionally or just reacting? That question cut through excuses. It didn't ask what he planned to do someday. It asked what he was choosing right now. It forced him to look at how much of his life had been shaped by habit, fear, and comfort instead of purpose. That single question changed how he viewed his days. If he was reacting, then someone else's expectations were guiding his life. If he was intentional, then he had to take responsibility for direction, not just effort. This wasn't about motivation. It was about ownership. He realized that without intention, even hard work leads nowhere meaningful. Once that question took hold, staying the same felt impossible. He couldn't unsee the gap between who he was and who he knew he could be. Comfort no longer felt neutral. It felt like a choice. and choosing comfort over growth began to feel like choosing regret in advance. Risk entered his life differently. After that, not as recklessness, not as impulse. Risk became commitment. Commitment to a life that aligned with his values, even if it cost him certainty. Leaving familiar ground wasn't about chasing excitement. It was about building something meaningful, even if the path was unclear. Brendon understood that real risk isn't jumping without thought. It's staying present when fear asks you to retreat. It's investing energy into a vision before you have proof it will work. It's choosing purpose over predictability, knowing you might lose approval along the way. As he stepped forward, the cost became real. Approval faded first. Not everyone understood his direction. Some questioned his choices. Others quietly distanced themselves. Predictability disappeared. Next, days no longer followed neat patterns. Outcomes weren't guaranteed. Comfort followed last. Emotional comfort, financial comfort, the comfort of knowing exactly where things were heading. Growth charged a price up front. There were no refunds, no reassurance, just a decision to continue. Brendon learned that calling doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with resistance, and every meaningful path demands something in return. He saw that many people want purpose without sacrifice. They want growth without discomfort. But calling asks for honesty. It asks you to let go of versions of yourself that no longer fit. It asks you to stand alone at times, trusting direction more than validation. What surprised him most wasn't the difficulty. It was the clarity. Once he committed, confusion began to fade. Not because everything became easy, but because everything became aligned. Effort finally matched intention. Actions finally matched values. Stability had promised happiness someday. Purpose offered meaning now, even in uncertainty. Even in challenge, even in fear. Brendon didn't lose everything. He let go of what was holding him still. And in that space, something more honest began to grow. Brendon Burchard didn't wake up one day feeling confident. Confidence wasn't the starting point. It was the result. In the beginning, there was hesitation, doubt, and uncertainty. What changed everything was not a sudden belief in himself, but a decision to act anyway. He learned that waiting for confidence is a trap. Confidence grows after you move, not before. Each small action created evidence. Each effort built trust. Discipline came first, and confidence followed. On days when motivation disappeared, habits carried him forward. He showed up when no one was watching. He studied when progress felt slow. He practiced when results were invisible. Inspiration was inconsistent, but structure was reliable. He didn't rely on how he felt. He relied on what he committed to. Over time, these daily habits created momentum. Not overnight success, but steady growth. Brendon saw that success doesn't come from bursts of passion. It comes from repeated actions aligned with purpose. Structure replaced hope. Systems replaced wishful thinking. The discipline to show up consistently mattered more than excitement. Confidence arrived quietly, built from thousands of small promises kept to himself. As his actions changed, his identity began to shift. For a long time, he saw himself as someone who had survived difficulty, someone who had endured challenges and recovered. But survival is not the same as leadership. Survival focuses on avoiding loss. Leadership focuses on creating direction. Growth required him to become a new person, not just improve the old one. This meant letting go of labels that once felt protective, the label of being cautious, the label of being realistic, the label of being someone who waits until everything feels safe. These labels had helped him cope, but they also limited him to lead. He had to stop seeing himself as someone reacting to life and start seeing himself as someone shaping it. Responsibility replaced excuses. Not responsibility in a heavy, punishing way, but in an empowering one. If he was responsible, then he had agency. If he had agency, then he had choice. And choice meant direction. He stopped asking why things were difficult and started asking how he could respond better. Leadership wasn't about control. It was about standards. The standards he held for how he showed up, how he treated people, and how he used his time. These inner standards changed everything. Brendon realized that goals are temporary, but standards are permanent. Goals can be achieved and forgotten. Standards shape who you become every day. He began raising his personal standards in 3 key areas: energy, clarity, courage. Energy meant managing his body, his focus, and his emotional state so he could show up fully. Clarity meant knowing what mattered most and eliminating distractions that diluted his effort. Courage meant acting in alignment with his values, even when fear was present. These standards created consistency. They removed decision fatigue. Instead of asking if he felt like doing the work, he asked if the work matched his standards. Success began to follow identity, not ambition. He didn't chase results. He became the kind of person who naturally produced them. As momentum grew, so did resistance. The middle phase was the hardest. The messy middle is where most people quit. Progress feels invisible. Effort feels unrewarded. Doubt returns whispering that nothing is working. Brendon experienced this too. Growth didn't look impressive during this phase. It looked repetitive and uncertain. He noticed how easy it is to quit when results are delayed. Many people interpret silence as failure. They expect quick validation. When it doesn't arrive, they retreat. Brendon learned that persistence is not about talent. It's about staying when nothing is confirming your choice. Those who win are not always the most gifted. They are the ones who remain. Staying requires patience. It requires trusting the process even when emotions fluctuate. Brendon understood that progress often happens underground before it becomes visible, like roots growing before a tree breaks the surface. Quitting early interrupts this process. Staying allows it to unfold. On the other side of risk, life looked different. Fear no longer led, purpose took its place. Meaning replaced comfort. Approval lost its grip. Impact became the measure. The risk didn't destroy what he had built. It revealed what he was capable of building all along. He found fulfillment, not in certainty, but in contribution. Not in playing it safe, but in playing it true. Life became less about protecting himself and more about expressing what mattered. The fear that once held him back no longer controlled his choices. Direction replaced hesitation. Commitment replaced waiting. Brendon didn't become someone else. He became more himself. The version that was buried under fear, comfort, and expectation finally had room to breathe. And in that space, purpose stopped being an idea and started becoming a way living. Brendon Burchard's journey reminds us of a simple but uncomfortable truth. A safe life can still be an unfulfilled life. Comfort can protect you from pain, but it can also protect you from growth. The moments that change us most rarely arrive when we feel ready. They arrive when we decide to stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. He didn't wait for fear to disappear. He moved forward with it. He didn't chase certainty. He chose meaning. And in doing so, he discovered that purpose is not found by avoiding risk, but by answering the quiet call to become more of who you are meant to be. The biggest risk isn't failing. It's waking up one day and realizing you never truly lived. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like this video. It helps this message reach more people who might need it. And subscribe to the Habits of Greatness channel for more stories, insights, and lessons that challenge you to grow, think deeper, and live with intention.